Hello everyone. If you're over 60 and worried about how to cope with life after losing your spouse, this video is made just for you. Today we're sharing 3 valuable tips from inspiring stories of individuals who have overcome the greatest loss of their lives. Join us as we explore how to live strong, independently, and find happiness even after life's most painful moments. Don't forget to support us and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on meaningful content like this. Life is like a journey on a train, and each soul that joins you travels with you only for a time. When their moment to part arrives, do not cling to the sorrow of their departure, but give thanks for the precious moments shared along the way. And if one should journey beside you from youth until old age, be even more grateful, for such a companionship is a rare blessing indeed. Yet, my dear friends, we know that not all love endures forever on this earthly plane. Some beloved partners are taken from us too soon, whether by illness or accident. And when they leave, the home they once filled with joy and warmth feels cold and empty, as though life itself has lost its foundation. But just as the rivers do not cease to flow, time does not stand still for our grief. We cannot summon back the departed, and so it is upon us, the living, to mend our hearts and continue our path. Consider this: when you lose your dearest companion, you must resist falling into the pit of despair. Picture, if you will, the depth of the loss. A person who walked beside you through much of life is no longer there. The memories you share can bring both comfort and sorrow, like a double-edged sword. In the story of Sister Lan, who at the age of 67 faced the unimaginable loss of her husband, we see a heart broken and a soul in despair. She stood at a crossroads, unsure how to carry on when the one she loved most was gone. But behold, as the darkness encircled her, Sister Lan embarked on a journey of rediscovering life's meaning. She teaches us that even in the darkest moments, there is always a glimmer of light waiting to be found. She reflects on her own sorrow, sharing, "When my husband passed away, it was as though my soul was hollow. There were nights when I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I should follow him into death. But each morning, when she gazed upon their photographs, filled with joy and laughter, she realized that her husband would not want her to live in such sorrow. Tears, no matter how many, could never bring him back. And so she resolved to live well, not just for herself, but to honor her husband's memory." Sister Lan learned this sacred truth: though the separation of life and death is the most painful of all, the living must continue on. The past, no matter how sweet, cannot overshadow the beauty of the present and the hope for the future. To live well today is not just a duty to oneself, but a tribute to those who have passed. Thus, my friends, when the time comes for your beloved to depart this world, remain calm, comfort your own spirit, care for your health, and guard your mind against the shadows of sorrow. Slowly, you will find your footing once more. Strength will return, and with it, the ability to live independently with grace and joy. Rejoice in life's simple pleasures. Eat when you are hungry, sleep when you are tired, and walk in the park or along the streets, marveling at the world around you. Live not in dependence on others, but learn to cherish solitude with wisdom and peace, as one might savor a fine, aged wine. Even in solitude, one can discover a world of rich and abiding joy. When you can stroll through the park or wander around the streets, learn to rely on yourself and not others. Embrace solitude with grace and wisdom, nurturing your inner world as if savoring a fine aged wine, enjoying the endless beauty of life. When you feel lonely, you can talk with friends, share your thoughts, and find joy in solitude. In doing so, even your later years can be filled with peace and fulfillment. Secondly, do not become overly dependent on your children in your remaining years. Have you ever wondered what life is like for elderly parents living with their grown children? Do they find comfort and happiness, or does it sometimes lead to unforeseen challenges and heartache? In the story of Mrs. Ha, a 65-year-old widow, we see a powerful lesson about independence and discovering true happiness in one's golden years. Mrs. Ha shares, "After my husband passed away, I lived with my daughter for many years, but now I live alone. Initially, I believed it was natural for parents and children to support each other. I raised my child, and in return, I expected her to be by my side when I grew old. However, after dedicating myself fully to my family, I found that over time, a distance began to grow between us. She continued, "My husband and I were both retired, and I never imagined I would live alone because I believed we would grow old together. But a sickness took my husband, leaving me by myself. At the time, my daughter had just given birth to my grandson, and my son-in-law suggested I live with them to rest and recover. I was grateful for their comfort and advice. Seeing my grandson felt like my husband had been reborn, and I poured all my energy into caring for him and helping with household chores. Initially, my daughter and son-in-law gave me a small monthly allowance, but as time went on, they stopped because I had my pension. As my grandson grew, my pension wasn't enough to support a household of 4. I mentioned it to my daughter several times, but she seemed irritated, occasionally giving me some money, but mostly ignoring my requests. Living together, we couldn't avoid disagreements. I often couldn't hold back from criticizing her for not saving money and shopping online daily without thinking about the future. When it came to disciplining my grandson, I believed children should be taught discipline early on, but my daughter and son-in-law let him grow freely. Over time, a rift formed between us, and they began to respect me less and less. Reflecting on those years of living with her daughter's family, Mrs. Ha decided to live on her own. When I suggested moving back to my house, they said they would miss me, she said. Despite the challenges she faced, Mrs. Ha found strength in her decision and learned that living independently was the key to her happiness in her later years. But it was clear they were relieved and even joyful when I moved out. It seemed like my presence had become a burden. When my grandson was little, they needed my help, but as they became more self-sufficient, I was no longer needed. Returning to my own home, at first I felt lonely and idle. Life wasn't as busy as before, and though it was simple, I found myself feeling lost without the emotional support I had come to rely on. However, over time, I learned to enjoy solitude, rediscovering my old hobbies, taking classes in calligraphy and painting, and joining community groups where I made new, like-minded friends. My days are now full of meaning. I realize that the freedom, peace, and independence I now have are exactly what I had always longed for after my husband passed away. Mrs. Ha's story serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of independence and self-reliance in one's later years. As life expectancy increases, many people face the challenge of living alone after their spouse has passed away. While living with adult children may seem like an ideal solution, it often brings unexpected difficulties. Mrs. Ha's experience highlights the reasons why maintaining independence is essential for older adults. First, living with children can lead to conflicts due to generational differences. Mrs. Ha's story shows how differing views on money, parenting, and daily routines can create tension. This is not just a cultural issue, but a common challenge faced in many countries. Second, the emotional strain of feeling like a burden can be damaging. Mrs. Ha felt unappreciated and even disrespected after years of devoting herself to her daughter's family. This pressure can lead to feelings of uselessness and depression in elderly parents. Third, finding personal fulfillment is crucial for a happy and healthy retirement. Ultimately, Mrs. Ha found joy in her solitude, rediscovering personal interests, and making new friends. This underscores the importance of pursuing personal hobbies and staying socially active, key factors in leading a fulfilling and meaningful retirement. In conclusion, while living with adult children may seem like a practical solution for aging parents, Mrs. Ha's story shows that independence often leads to greater happiness and satisfaction. Lastly, do not rush into finding a new partner or remarrying. Are you considering seeking a new companion or getting remarried in your later years? Before making such a decision, listen to the story of Mrs. Han, 62, who thought she had found new companionship after her husband passed away, but ended up facing unexpected challenges and disappointments. Her story serves as a warning to those contemplating remarriage in their twilight years. Let's explore the risks and realities of remarriage later in life through Mrs. Han's journey, which may help you make more informed decisions and avoid future regrets. Mrs. Han shared, "I've been through 2 marriages. My first husband passed away when I was 53, and 3 years later I remarried, only to divorce within a year. Every time I think back to that second marriage, I still feel pain and anger. I want to share my story to remind others who are considering remarrying at this age. At 50, I retired, hoping to travel with my husband after he also retired. But he passed away before we could fulfill that dream due to illness. After his death, I was consumed by grief for a long time. My son was worried and suggested I move in with him, but I didn't want to be a burden. He already had enough to manage. My son recommended that I join a senior travel group to lift my spirits, but not wanting to inconvenience him, I decided to sign up for a dance and poetry class on my own. Moreover, the acceptance of a new family can be a challenge. The children and grandchildren of a new spouse often have their own established ways, and the arrival of someone new may disrupt the balance. The story of my struggle to care for Mr. Sun's grandson illustrates how, without mutual respect and cooperation, tensions can grow. Lastly, emotional readiness is essential. After the loss of a spouse, the heart may feel an overwhelming loneliness, and the desire for companionship may lead one to make hasty decisions, ignoring warning signs along the way. My own hasty decision to remarry, despite my son's caution, brought disappointment and heartache. In conclusion, though having a partner in old age is a blessing, we must approach such decisions with wisdom and care. Understanding the potential difficulties that may arise allows us to make informed choices, leading to a more stable and happy relationship. Let us not forget, my friends, that though life after the loss of a spouse is filled with sorrow, there is still hope for joy and fulfillment. By not rushing into new relationships, by not relying too heavily on our children, and by taking time to heal, we can build a life of purpose once again. Take care of your health, find joy in new activities, and reconnect with others. Cherish your independence, honor the memories of your lost partner, and open your heart to new experiences. For life is a precious gift, and each moment is to be treasured. With wise decisions and a focus on well-being, you can continue to live fully, even after a great loss. And as the stories of Lan, Ha, and Han remind us, though grief is natural, it is resilience and self-care that are the keys to moving forward and finding light in the darkest of times. Thank you for watching. We hope that the stories and tips shared in this video have provided you with encouragement and helpful advice. Life goes on, and you can still find joy and peace after loss. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comment section below. We'd love to hear from you. And be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel to motivate us to bring even more meaningful content. See you in the next video. It was there that I met Mr. Sun. At first, we were just casual friends. One day, I twisted my ankle while going down the stairs. Mr. Sun helped me to the hospital and took care of me at home while I couldn't attend classes. From then on, we grew closer. After 2 months, he proposed and said he wanted me to be his companion so we could support each other in old age. I felt joyful, but I didn't agree immediately and told him I would discuss it with my son Day. My son did not object, but he gently advised me to consider things carefully and not rush into decisions. Yet, as I stood at the crossroads of choice, I did not heed his wisdom. I believed Mr. Sun to be a good man, and I thought I was ready. Within a few short days, we completed the marriage procedures, and I moved into his home. At first, all was well. Though I took on most of the household chores, I did so without complaint, for I was accustomed to such duties. But soon, the peace unraveled. One day, some old friends invited me to travel with them. I agreed with joy, but when Mr. Sun heard of it, his heart was not at peace. He told me, "If you go, who will tend to the house?" I felt a deep unfairness stirring within me. Was I here only to serve, to clean, to labor? A great quarrel ensued, and words were exchanged that left me questioning the very foundation of our marriage. For the first time, doubts clouded my heart. When I returned from the trip, the tension only deepened. Mr. Sun's son went through a divorce, and his grandson came to live with us. I took on the role of caregiver, treating the child as my own, but the boy was difficult, stubborn, and refused to listen. For days I bore this burden, yet after a time, I could endure it no longer. I suggested to Mr. Sun that his son should care for his own child, but my words were met with strong resistance. "You are not his mother," he said, "and it is not your place to interfere." I was wounded deeply by his words. The heavy silence and hurt dragged on for months, until one day, I could no longer bear the weight of this unhappiness. I chose the path of divorce. knowing that living alone, though lonely, was far better than living under such strain. Reflecting on it now, I see the importance of understanding the trials and risks of remarrying in old age. Just as we must be cautious in building a house upon uncertain ground, so too must we be wise before entering into a new marriage late in life. The habits and views that we carry from our many years can make it hard to live in harmony with one another. Like a garden that has been tended to in a particular way for so long, it can be difficult to adapt to a new gardener in different ways. This I experienced in my conflicts with Mr. Sun over household duties and personal plans.